Fantasy managers, hello and welcome back to the FPL Addicts Game Week 3 preview podcast show powered by Esports Live and sponsored by Bonus Bank. If you're new around here, make sure you're giving the podcast some love with a like, rating or review as well as a subscription, and we'll get right into it today. Boys, don't have anything to talk about, so we can start talking about the important stuff, FPL and the Premier League football in general. Joining me today is Ollie and Mikey, and we're expecting Reedy to be along just shortly. As Mikey was saying, he's got quite a high XS. His expected sleeps are a little bit higher today than usual. So it's classic Reedy, but he will be joining us shortly. And Jack and Charlie can't be with us today, but Charlie has filmed his review for his team, and you'll still get Captain's Corner with Chaz. So you still get your fix of CC on your Friday morning or Friday evening podcast, wherever you are listening or watching along in the world. So boys, Premier League is going to be back for Game Week 3 this weekend. There's been a lot that happened in Game Week 2. You know, some people played their wild cards. Some people brought in Darwin Núñez. Didn't turn out too well for certain people. But there's been a lot of things that have shaken up how people are going to, move forward with in FPL. So a man who did bring in Darwin Núñez is the FPL Reverend Mikey. And Mikey, I just want your reaction to that headbutt.
Mate, I think it just goes to show how much of an unpredictable game fantasy Premier League really is. We can try our best looking at our statistics. We can look at Darwin, even though he was on the pitch game week 1. We saw he got 1 goal, he got 1 assist. Also, his expected data was off the charts. We've talked about Reedy's expected sleeps. What about Darwin's XR, which is the expectation that he'll get absolutely rattled by Anderson for the whole game? I'm not sure if anyone's seen that video where he's just basically getting wound up the whole game.
Saw the tweet.
Brilliant. All culminated in a headbutt. I was watching the game and I was thinking that Darwin wasn't going to score, even though he was getting chance after chance. And I saw him; he was getting wound up. I saw the defender in his ear the whole game, and it looked inevitable, unfortunately. But that's FPL sometimes. Sometimes you can make a decision based off some of the best data. And the thing is, if Darwin was starting, we were all really happy if we had him. We were afraid of him if we didn't have him. And then, that goes and happens. But hopefully he's learned his lesson. And so have I.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning to you, Tiffany, FPL Firefly. Great to see you in the chat again. Familiar face to the podcast and everyone on there. So great to see you there. And, Darwin Núñez, what a welcome to the Premier League. Scores on his debut and then gets sent off in his first home game at Anfield. Doesn't really get a more hectic start than that. Ollie, you've written an article this week, your first one of the season so far, about replacements for Leon Bailey at 5 million. If you haven't already, check down below. You'll find a link to the articles on the Sportsmate app. It's an absolutely brilliant read, and especially if you've got Leon Bailey in your team, which a lot of people do. So, Ollie, do you just want to sort of reel off your best replacements you think for Leon Bailey?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mini captain's corner without the captains, isn't it? I'm trying to be the Chaz impersonator. I don't know how good a job I'm going to do at that.
Got your hair out first, mate.
Yeah, get a much better haircut. Yeah.
Maybe we'll have to do it. But I had Leon Bailey myself in game week 2, and I just thought, you know what? It's time to cut my losses. Only 2 weeks, so I wasn't really affected that much, but I wanted a better option. The 3 that I sort of picked out, I had a few that I sort of had a look at, and I thought, do I want to go with it? Do I not? But I've gone with 3. I've gone with Joshua Da Silva, which was my transfer in, my choice instead of Leon Bailey. Just with the fact he's cheap, he's just risen to 4.6, so you may well have missed out on that price rise. I think that I got him in at 4.6. Can't actually remember. But he's got 2 goals over the season. I had a look. His expected goals so far this season, like something like 0.06 or 0.08. And he's got 2 goals off the back of that. One that was a belter and one that David De Gea just went to sleep, didn't he? He's done a reading, gone to sleep. But at the end of the day, 2 goals is 2 goals. And at the end of the day, it's not one of those where when you open the app and you go down to the fixture, you see goals, De Silva. It doesn't show a replay of the goal. It just shows that he scored. He's getting himself into good positions. The one knock that I did have on him, though, was the fact that he's not got as many minutes as some other players. Obviously, he's been subbed on and subbed off so far this season. And with Mikkel Damsgaard coming in, plays in a similar position, there might be potential issues with his minutes. But if you want him as a bench player, as I do long term, I think he's fine. I chatted to a few uni mates about it, and they said Kiernan Dewsbury Hall was an option, if I could speak. I really liked him at Luton when I saw him in the Championship. Obviously, being a Rovers fan, I watched a fair bit of that division, and he played all right against us when we came up against him. Good player. I was surprised to see that the goal he scored recently was only his second goal in this last 2 seasons, so he's already matched his goal tally from last season, which is a bit of a problem, but I think he may well increase his minutes this season. If he can bet himself in a bit more, he may well increase that goal tally a fair bit. So I like him as a shout. And the third one, Rodrigo. The only reason why I didn't go with Rodrigo is that I had other transfer plans and I didn't want to take a hit to save $1 million. I didn't really want to save $1 million anywhere. But if you feel like you want to save $1 million or you've got no other transfer plans, Rodrigo is a good shout. Currently the top scorer in FPL, ahead of the likes of Salah and De Bruyne and Kane and Haaland and whoever else. He's got the most points across any position, across any price. So they were the 3 that I sort of picked out. There's probably plenty more that you could pick. I mean, Nottingham Forest have signed about 20 million players, so you can go with one of them as well. But they were the 3 that I sort of picked out. But yeah, I went with De Silva in the end.
Yeah, man. I think Rodrigo's a great shout. I think obviously he does play Chelsea next, which is maybe what's putting some people off. But after that, Leeds' run of fixtures look absolutely incredible. But I also think as well with Rodrigo, the fact that he is listed as a midfielder is an absolute crime. So we know he's going to be getting the extra clean sheet points on the rare occasion that Leeds do manage to pick up a clean sheet. He's going to get the extra point for the goal as well. So also with Bamford out, I think Rodrigo is looking like Leeds' main man.
Yeah.
Up front, the main focal point of their attack. So, it's going to be great. And now, speaking of the main man, he has risen indeed. Here he is. It's Mr. Reedy. Welcome, dude.
Reedy, how you doing, mate?
Good morning, fellas. Well, good evening, I should say, to you two boys in Australia. Yeah, I'm doing okay, doing well. Friday's here, so that's always going to be a good thing. And the footy's nearly back, so... there's things obviously we're going to talk about from last week that maybe me and Mikey might experience or have experienced a bit of pain on that, but it is what it is. We're grown men. We have to accept our decisions and we move forward. That's the way it is. So yeah, I'm good, mate. How are you?
So much pain.
You can hear it in his voice. You can absolutely hear it. Good to see we're getting so many questions and comments in the live chat. If you are joining us live, get as many questions and comments in as you possibly can, and we'll do our absolute best to get to them. This was Chris when you were talking about Damsgaard and De Silva. Ollie, they've got a great run of fixtures to Brentford. And that was actually my next topic that I wanted to talk about, boys. So, Chris, that is what's known as a segue in radio, and you've really assisted me there. So you get your 3 FPL points for that. Brentford have got an absolutely glorious set of fixtures, boys. There's going to be a lot of people bringing in Tony, De Silva, Damsgaard, Rico Henry, David Raya, all these sorts of players, because their fixtures are absolutely brilliant. Reedy, are Brentford a team that you think that people should be really focusing and targeting now?
100%. Don't see why not. As you've just mentioned there, the fixtures look fantastic. They've started really, really well. People are giving them a little bit of a, free pass because free pass because of the United game. People aren't really sort of counting that. But I mean, to beat United 4-0, even as bad as United are, is still some achievement, especially when people were writing them off because Eriksen's left and gone to United. So would Tony be able to sort of do what he did last season? But they certainly don't look shy of being a fantastic team this year. So yeah, fixture-wise, they look brilliant. So I think assets like, Tony, De Silva has been mentioned, even Jensen, who's not probably been mentioned by people, who did really, really well in their last game. So you've definitely got to have Brentford players on the radar. They've got Fulham away next. And then the next two after that, I'm afraid, Mikey, are Everton. And then it's Palace away, which is slightly trickier because obviously Palace are a pretty decent team.
Toughest fixture in the league, that.
Toughest
fixture.
Yeah, you'll win that.
FDR 5, that. FDR 5.
So, yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, yeah, so there's some really great value players as well, don't forget. So 7 mil for Tony, but then below that, there's a fantastic choice of players that you can pick from.
Yeah, I love the fact that Jack isn't here. And already there's been several pops at Man United. So let's just keep them going. Anything to take the focus away from the fact that Everton have lost their first 2 games, I'm more than happy to.
If there's anything worse than losing your first 2 games, it's losing at home to Brighton and losing 4-0 away to Brentford. So you can take that.
Oof.
So,
we
would be giving it more, I reckon, if Jack was here, and he deserves it. That's why he's not on the podcast today. He's still crying from the weekend, I hear. So, yeah, his head's in his cereal bowl and he's still got tears dripping down his eyes saying, Ronaldo's going to score 20 this season. It's going to be fine. But it's not looking good for Man United, and it's not going to get any easier for them because their fixtures coming up. We just talked about Brentford and how nice their fixtures are. Teams like Man United, Aston Villa, Newcastle have got some difficult fixtures coming up, and they're sort of 3 teams that I'd had highlighted. So, yeah, it's only going to get worse for Man United, I think, at this point. And they've had 2 fairly, not easy, but 2 fairly capable fixtures to get points in their opening 2, and they haven't managed to. So, avoid Man United assets at all cost is always, what we say in FPL. And, yeah, the sorts of, Aston Villa also just mentioned, they're not really doing too well to start the season. They look leaky. A lot of people go with Aston Villa defenders usually. I would sort of say for Villa, stick with the attackers. Go with Watkins, go with Ings. They've both been brilliant to start the season so far, and they've rewarded their managers. And then for Newcastle assets, who I'd also mentioned, I'd just wait until, we've got Man City, then Palace, then Liverpool, which are 3 quite difficult fixtures coming up. So I'd just wait until the green fixtures start flourishing a little bit more, like Brentford, and then you can sort of go with those assets again. The Trippiers, the Wilsons, the Dan Burns, the Fabian Schars, if you really want to, dip your toes into that. So just hold off with those sorts of 3 teams at the minute of 3 that I've highlighted, and then you can go back to them and, sort of pick them again when their fixtures are a little bit nicer. Mikey, what other teams do you sort of think at the minute have some really nice fixtures though?
At the minute, I think Spurs fixtures after the first couple of games are looking quite good. I think it's one of the reasons why this week I may be on a certain Sir Harold Kane, but we'll more on that later. So I think definitely having a Spurs attacker is something that we can look at, because I think some people were kind of put off them after their first 2 fixtures. I think, people were umming and ahhing over that Chelsea fixture especially. But after that, they're looking quite good. I think one of the things that are maybe putting us off some of the more key Spurs assets is their minutes at the moment, because we're unsure still about what Perisic is doing. And he's tempting, very tempting indeed. The fact that he came on and took corners with both feet was so naughty on either side of the pitch. So you can see the assists coming in there from corners. So, yeah, really looking forward to having Spurs assets. I think Chelsea also have incredible fixtures. So if you're not on some of the Chelsea defence, I would definitely recommend that. One of the few positives that I was able to take from a wild card was the fact that I do have Reece James in my team. And I was umming and ahhing about getting him in. I was a bit concerned because of Chelsea's defence in pre-season. They were looking leaky, but Reece James there with the obvious reminder that we don't bring in these Chelsea wing backs for their defensive returns, but for their offensive returns. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chelsea, a team that the fixtures are getting a lot greener for now. As you've said, a lot of people turned away by the, conceding 4 in pre-season to Arsenal, but they do look to be doing the goods this season once again in the Premier League. It's good to see you in the live chat, Damo. And we've got a question from Tiff, and I'll go to you for this one, Reedy, because you know absolutely everything about absolutely everyone. How close is Sinistera to being ready for Leeds?
Well, obviously in terms of his injury, it was a big concern, when he was forced off during the Leeds draw against Crystal Palace. He was basically taken off with a hamstring injury. so he could return for his competitive debut against Chelsea on August 21st. So, this weekend. So that's when basically you're looking at him potentially coming back. I mean, I wouldn't get him in just yet. It is a risk putting him in this week for this weekend's fixture. It's a tough one for Leeds, obviously. And we don't know how fit he actually is to feature, whether he can start and so on. But he's looking very good, and he's getting closer and closer to top speed. So you'd have to assume that he'll have been in training this week, and Leeds will be hopeful that he'll be available for the weekend. So yeah, that's the kind of update on him at the moment. But I wouldn't jump in for him just yet. I'd potentially wait till Leeds play Chelsea, and then after that, you can look at getting him in then.
Yeah, and the one thing that I sort of thought when I did the research, the article, when I looked at Rodrigo, is his versatility across his career has been unreal. He's played, I think Transfermarkt listed it as a second striker role for Leeds, and I haven't watched a lot of Leeds so far this season, but he's played.
Lucky you.
He's played. He plays a bona fide 10 as well. He's played on the left and on the right as well as through the middle, so he can play anywhere across the front three and as a 10. So it just shows that even if Sinisterra does come in, Rodrigo, I don't think that Sinisterra will be playing as a 10, but it just shows that if Jesse Marsch wanted to be fluid, you could push Rodrigo out to the left or to the right or wherever to fit someone in, to fit someone like Sinisterra in possibly. So it'll be interesting to see how. How that
I mean, at
goes.
6.5, it's 6.5, isn't he? So he's 0.5 more than Rodrigo. So you've got to kind of weigh it up really on what's the better option out of the two. Most people would say, based on what you've said there, Ollie, with Rodrigo's versatility, that maybe he's probably the better pick, especially while Bamford's out. So yeah, it's one to keep an eye on, as I say. It's one to monitor. I was really excited to see Sinisterra play in the Premier League. So it was unfortunate he got that injury. So I am looking forward to when he's back and seeing what he's about. And that pacey winger, especially with them losing Rafinha, who we know how much quality he had. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad we got you boys here, because about as much as I know about Sinisterra is that he's got a quick card on FIFA, and that's where the extent of my knowledge goes with him. So fingers crossed, he can turn out to be a good asset, and we can learn a little bit more about him other than the fact that he can run quite quickly. But we'll just have to see. Mikey, the threemium, you've talked about it so much this season already. The one-eum, the threemium.
Oh, bro.
What is the way to go this season? Do you have any sort of idea? With 3 game weeks in now, do you still know which way managers should be going?
I can't believe it. Oh, it's embarrassing, especially after I chatted so much wham about the freemium in pre-season. And I think it just goes to show that FPL is a game where you just have to react. We've got IBK in the chat saying disaster meme. and I think that's one of the things, you only really end up there if you've had a disaster like I have, which is, you've one of your players has had the red card, and so yeah, I have ended up on a threemium, because Darwin got that red card, and also Bowen, by the way, who I had on my wild card. Bowen looked terrible. He obviously looked
naughty transfer, as you described it.
I know, and it was all set to be quite good, and then against Nottingham Forest, he was just absolutely absent.
Just to make you feel even worse, Mikey, he scored a great goal last night, Bowen.
I know he did.
The Conference League. Antonio and the new man, Skamaka, I think his name is. They all scored, so definitely 3 people to look out for. Because I do agree, the Bowen pick might just be the wrong timing. Maybe he needs to find his feet a little bit this season. But if he gets firing, and I'm sure he will be a fantastic asset.
And so the thing about Darwin is that I was looking at assets below his price range, and I was thinking, there was nothing that really excited me. So I feel like, some people have gone for Tony, and some people have downgraded their Darwin to Mitrovic, and I just wasn't feeling that. And so I had a look at the check, and I saw that I thought, who can I get if I downgrade Bowen? Let's just say hypothetically. So I looked at Bowen to Rodrigo, and then if I did that, I had the exact amount of funds needed to go Darwin to Harry Kane. And those two players aren't exactly terrible. So I thought, you know what, I'll catch the price rise, and then just go for it. Ultimately, like, as much as I hate the fact that I'm on a freemium, sometimes in FPL you just have to react to the situation that's given in front of you. In a few game weeks' time, I can always downgrade Harry Kane again to someone like Darwin, and then upgrade my defence, for example. But yeah, it hurts, Elliot. Thanks for bringing it up. Yeah.
It's been such a big part of our discussion on the podcast so far this season is, how many premium assets do you need in your team? Tiff's just said that she's still got a freemium. She's got Haaland, Salah and KDB, which I think is 3 fairly good players to have in your team at this point. Quack, back to you. FPL Rubber Ducky, great to see you in the chat once again. And he's just asked about your wildcards, boys. We'll touch on that in just a little bit. We will touch on their wildcards because, spoiler alert, it didn't go according to plan for a few players in their teams. Certain Darwin Núñez might have caused a few issues for them both, but we will get onto that just a little bit later. Ollie, Erling Haaland or Harry Kane was a massive debate going into the season. It's been a massive debate after game week 1, and it's now a massive debate after game week 2 as well. You're someone who I believe has taken Harry Kane out of your team for Erling Haaland, despite him scoring. So you back Erling Haaland more than Harry Kane so far this season?
I do, and I went with Kane because of really it was one bad game from Haaland, and I had Haaland all the way through pre-season and fluffed it. And I saw in game week 1 how much Haaland can stuff over teams that don't have him or people that don't have him. And here's the one reason why I wanted Haaland the whole time was because of his ownership. And I knew that if I didn't have him, he was going to make me pay for it. And what did he do in game week 1? He made me pay for it. And so the plan was, as soon as game week 2 happened, my plan was to always transfer from Kane to Haaland. Now, I was awake watching that game. Rovers had just played, so I stayed up a little bit later and watched the second half of Tottenham-Chelsea. And Kane looked pretty average, to be honest. He looked really absent. And the one chance that he did get before his goal, he fluffed, which you'd expect him to take that. But otherwise, I watched Tottenham play the first time around a fair bit of that game, and he dropped deep, and he was, playing more as a midfielder rather than the number 9 we know him as. And so I went to Haaland. I had the transfer ready in the 92nd minute of that game when it was still 2-1. And I had a little bit of a debate after the goal. I'm like, should I transfer him out? I'm like, yeah, I've got to stick to my guns. Got to stick to the plan. So I've gone with Haaland this week. Pretty good fixture. But I mean, United, I should say that Liverpool have got the new Norwich in Man United in the league this weekend. So I've got the armband on Salah as it stands, but it's going to be between Salah and Haaland as who I give the armband to.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. And Rabaducky's just said in the chat that you can only do the Haaland Kane transfer one more time and get away with it pretty much. Because I think, we're going to see Haaland just keep rising and rising. And Kane, we're not too sure what's going to happen with him. He's had an interesting start to the season, only 2 game weeks in, obviously. So we're not going to read into it too much. But it's definitely safe to say that Haaland has been the one impressing just that little bit more, I think, so far. But very interesting from you there, Ollie. And we will obviously touch on the transfer that you have made this week. But a very proactive move, waiting for that full-time whistle to go, making sure Harry Kane doesn't hobble off with anything. We know he's very, very injury prone at times. So a very, very proactive move. And yeah, obviously what you think is going to be best for your team. So we'll move on.
Sorry, if we'd have hobbled off it made my job easier.
Definitely, because you would have gone straight to Haaland.
I would have just transferred it anyway.
Absolutely. You were waiting for nothing. You could have just made it at any time. But it doesn't matter in the end because he is the man who is going to be in your team next week, and it is not going to be likely that it is going to be Harry Kane unless you transfer him back in. If you hear that Haaland has a little injury, but we don't know what's going to happen. Fingers crossed, not trying to put anything into the universe as someone that doesn't own Haaland and still doesn't by game week 3, but we'll just have to see. We will move on because we have got the probabilities for clean sheets and goals by Bonus Bank. If you haven't heard already, Bonus Bank have launched a free tool this season, which is going to help everyone with their FPL mini leagues. The tool displays the probabilities of clean sheet of each team and which players are the most likely to score for them as well. It's obviously useful in determining which defenders to bring in and helps with your captain choices and which midfielders and attackers to bring in as well. So for this week, the top 3 teams with clean sheet probabilities. In second, we've got Man City with a 43% chance of keeping a clean sheet away at Newcastle. And then in joint first, we've got both Arsenal and Tottenham. Arsenal play Bournemouth and Tottenham play Wolves, and they're both a 48% chance of keeping a clean sheet according to Bonus Bank. So get your Man City, your Tottenham, and your Arsenal defenders in if you're a stat man like the FPL Reverend himself sitting at the top right of the screen there. We know that he likes to use this tool every single week. He gets his hands on every single bit of data that he possibly can. So he's waiting for the 3 players that are most likely to score. And it's people that we've already talked about on the podcast already. In third is Mohamed Salah. He's got a fixture against Man United. He's got a 41% chance of scoring against them. Harry Kane is in second with a 48% chance of scoring against Wolves. And Haaland is the number 1 pick for this week. I have a feeling we're going to see those 3 names a lot this season in this section. And he has a 53% chance of scoring against Newcastle. So, Mikey, what do you make of the stats for this week? Do you sort of agree with what the generators picked out?
Yeah, I think as with stats, I think it's always good to see what the sample size of the data is being picked up on. So a lot of that stuff is historic. I think obviously whilst those stats are great, what I do think about, and I think you might appreciate this, is I think that maybe Newcastle could be a slightly better team than the stats are making out, just because of recency and their current run of form. They are currently the 4th best defense in the leagues in 2022, and in terms of goals conceded. So they are looking really good, and I think that Haaland, who is adapting to a new league as well, which is something that stats can't pick up. As much as I love a stat, there are certain things that stats can't pick up. So, hopefully, if you're a Newcastle fan, you might fancy yourself against that Man City side. Also, another thing that stats don't pick up is the fact that Man City historically struggle at St. James's Park. It is one of those bogey fixtures for them. So, yeah, definitely rely on the stats, and I think that they're great. But there are certain things that stats can't measure, and I think Newcastle are one of those teams right now which could be a lot better than we're giving them credit for.
Ooh, liking everything that the Reverend's saying there. It's music to my ears what you're saying. It's giving me hope for a Newcastle result this weekend. So I was going to let you keep talking for as long as you wanted there, but we do have to cut you off because we've got a fair bit still to get through today. Sandwich Podcast is asking what your team is saying, Reedy, so it won't be too long. We're going to go into how our teams went next and talk about our transfers. And Josh, who's an absolute legend of the FPL Addicts community, says he was just a couple points off the manager of the week for this week, which is very unlucky. But like before, it does segue me perfectly into the manager of the week this week. So it's Lockie Nixon. He hauled 85 points this week, which is a brilliant score. I think the average was around high 50s, so well above the average there. And he earns himself the 40 Aussie dollar cash prize pool for this week. So congratulations to you, Lockie. And we'll hope to see you on the podcast at some point soon because you're doing quite well at the start of the season. I was checking the leagues, so would love to get you on the podcast as soon as possible. And don't forget, for everyone out there listening or watching along, you can still enter our mini leagues. In the description down below will give you all the information you need, or you can head to fpladdicts.com.au, which will have a link which can help you quickly register, and the details of the paid or the members league, as we're calling it this season, and all the information about all the prizes as well. Elsewhere in our competitions, in our public league, Andrew Murno still sits on top with a big haul of 91 points. So if you thought 85 was big, 91, just 9 points off the century mark there. In the women's league, Mira from Canberra hauled 84 points this week and sits in first place. And then in the head-to-head, the admin still sits on top of the ladder in our league of 16. So a lot to play for in all those leagues, and definitely they're spicing up towards the start of the season so far. But everyone wants to know how we went last week, boys, and what we're doing for this week. That's the important part of the podcast. So we'll start with you, Mikey. I'll bring your team up on screen now, and you can sort of explain how well or poor your wild card went in your opinion.
Yeah, so obviously that big red Dorito of death there is on Darwin as one of the main reasons for wildcarding. in Darwin Núñez. Experienced the old red card. So that wasn't great. It was disappointing to see Trent Alexander-Arnold blank again. Obviously, a couple of things went wrong as well at the back with Saliba. An own goal. It was an own goal. So, it was just absolutely wild to have that. And then Jarrod Bowen looked absent against a decent-looking Nottingham Forest side. So we've tried to remedy the situation. We've tried to remedy it. And so if we look at my team here, we've been forced to take Darwin out, obviously, because having 9 mil sat on your bench is not good at all. So we brought in Harry Kane because I didn't like the options below him. I'm not sure I'm a massive fan of Brentford. Unfortunately, they don't get to play Man United every week and take pot shots at David De Gea, who was shocking. And so, I wasn't really feeling Tony. And I was going to give Bowen one more week, but obviously the red card has dictated and forced my hand to do something a bit drastic. So we've got Rodrigo here, and we've got Kane for Bowen and Darwin. So yeah, the team not looking so weak because of the fact that it's on a freemium, but at the same time, either Haaland or Kane can become Núñez again, or even someone like Jota, by the way, because let's not forget that he exists when he comes back from injury, and then I can upgrade some of those defenders or perhaps even a goalkeeper. But yeah, thoughts.
I could just tell how difficult that was for you to
it's horrible,
explain your choices. Ollie, I'll let you give your thoughts on the Reverend's re-evaluated scraps from his wild card in game week 2.
I don't think his wild card was actually a bad team. As he just got really unlucky with the Darwin Núñez stuff that we talked about. Obviously, we said off air, didn't we, that you can't predict stuff like that. You can't predict Joachim Andersen absolutely playing a number on Darwin. How good was that from him? From a defensive point of view, from Palace point of view, he's absolutely played it to a T. And Núñez has reacted. He was so good in game week 1. I was even thinking about maybe bringing him in. So it's not a bad move. Neither was Jarrod Bowen for mine. He's not a great start to the season, but we've seen what he's done in the past in a claret and blue shirt. But the recovery from that isn't too bad. I like the Rodrigo move, even with a tough fixture this week, and to bring in Harry Kane. Again, I've just transferred him out, so I hope that this week at least he does really, really poorly just to justify my decision. But I like the recovery, to be honest.
Yeah. It's so funny, the fact that I've chatted so much rubbish about freemium, because one of the things that I was saying pre-season was, you can only captain one player, and yet here in my team, I've got 3 premium assets, and the armband is on Jesus. It's all gone wrong. It's all gone wrong. Yeah.
I was going to say, if we had shown you this team before the season and said this is what your team's going to look like in game week 3, I don't think you'd be too happy, Mikey.
I'd have thrown myself into the river Mersey, mate.
So it is going to be a negative 4 from you this week, isn't it? It's going to be a hit.
Yeah, FPL Rubber Ducky with the consolation there saying FPL can be so cruel. TT, there, much love, my friend. I'll be back, Priest. Yeah, like Arnie, I will be back.
And all the love. You're getting all the love in the chat, Mikey.
Just unlucky. I think that's one of the things is there are certain things that you just can't predict. And so, I adapt, I move, I get on with it. We bring in Harold. We have 3 premiums in, and then I put my faith in Jesus. Let's see what happens.
Absolutely. You know, if you're not going to put your faith in Jesus, then I think you're doing the wrong thing because of your real life profession and the title as the FPL Reverend as well. So really excited to see how you go this week, Mikey. I think you've got a brilliant team on paper. So fingers crossed this week they can do a little bit more from you and there's going to be no red cards or own goals. We'll keep our fingers crossed and we'll move on to your team, Reedy, and see how you managed to get on in game week 2. So take us through your team.
Yeah, well, the good thing about Mikey taking so long and sounding so in so much pain about his wild card is I pretty much had a very, very similar team. So he's done me a favour there. Really, I don't really need to kind of say too much because Darwin's the standout and so Saliba. So I mean Jesus. I'll tell you one thing. I was playing around my team. I was considering not having Jesus. Imagine I'd have not picked him.
Wow.
I'd have probably not been on the pod this week, guys. I'll be honest. I probably wouldn't have been here. But yeah, very much of the same as Mikey. Salah getting a blank again, which I know a certain Mr. Rubber Ducky will be happy with. Going no Salah. Shout out to the boys there as well. TT, IBK, Ducky, Tiff as well. There's so many of those guys who regularly sort of communicate and speak to you on Twitter. So it's great to have them on the podcast. In the chat, and it's just a case for me. 54 points could have been a lot better, and I think that's it. I just look for the best thing to do now is really look forward on how we can gain ground now because this one here, this De Silva guy who was on the bench for me, that was my own fault to be honest because I did my team so last minute. Making a few changes with it being a wild card that I completely overlooked, even having him in the side. So yeah, not much to take away from it. It was a crap wild card. Let's just put it as blunt as that. And game week 3 is going to bring plenty more points, isn't it, Mikey? We're going to get probably close to 100, aren't we, mate? Surely the priest can do something for us. A few good words to the man upstairs, yeah.
Oh, mate, I don't think any amount of prayer can rescue how unlucky we've been with own goals and red cards the week after our wild card. So, really, what have you done to the team? How's it changing going into the next game week?
Well, I haven't gone for a threemium. I'll tell you that much. I mean, I've enjoyed a bit of the game we used to play as kids, stuck in the mud, but I don't want to be stuck in the mud anymore. I'm afraid, Mikey. So. You can have that pain if you want it with the threemium, mate. You can have it all day long. For me, Ivan Toney's come in for Darwin, and I've also brought in Reece James, which it's a given, really, isn't it? You've got to have Reece James in. Why I didn't have him in on the wild card? I'm just going to blame the kids for that. I'm not going to say anything else about that one. But yeah, Reece James is in, and Ivan Toney's in, as we spoke about before. Brentford's great set of fixtures. I wanted to move down to give me more funds in the rest of my team and so on. So I can quite easily upgrade Diaz to Cancelo if I need to. I can upgrade one of the midfielders, or I can even upgrade Ward if I wanted to as well. And I've still got Saliba on the bench. So yeah, that's my moves moving forward into game week 3.
TT's loving them as well. Brilliant moves, he says. Tony the template breaker, and we're going to see a lot of people bringing in a lot of Brentford assets. And a lot of people without Reece James trying to get Reece James into their teams. I think they're 2 very astute transfers that you have just made there, Reedy. And I'm in full support of them. And fingers crossed for you and the Reverend that this game week, the transfers that you make go a little bit more according to plan. Ollie, we'll move on to you now and we'll have a look at how you went in game week 2 when we pride you pride yourself, on beating the average. And you have done this week. 72 points, a brilliant score. So take us through your team, mate.
Yeah, I'm not happy with all of it, and the bits that I'm not really too happy with, I've tried to change. Luis Diaz, massive fan of that. I said pre-season when we were on with Ali, Bruce Ball, that I had a feeling that Luis Diaz would just do something for me, and lo and behold, he's done it. 9 points this week. What a goal that was, by the way.
What a goal.
I'm sure that Reedy absolutely loved it. Just doing cartwheels from wherever he was watching the game. It was some strike, and I was obviously the beneficiary of that. Again, the City double up helping me out. 17 points across the 2. Cancelo must have for mine. Gabriel Jesus. I saw a comment from Chris Elliot before, who, you know, when I was talking about captaincy between Salah and now Haaland, Gabriel Jesus has got to be considered in that too. And just on that, we've got Chaz, who's not here, but we'll talk about captains later on. So I'm sure he'll give a better insight than I'll be able to do. But it's something I've got to consider. I think Salah, obviously last season, burnt Elliot when he didn't captain him, and I don't want to be burnt like that. So I'm going to go with Salah. But in terms of last week, yeah, the big move is Harry Kane. Obviously got his goal in the last minute. Another great game of football, by the way, that Reece James obviously scored in. So I've gone to Haaland. And so that's, you know, what I've got to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you've had a really fantastic week, Ollie, and you know you're only building on that, as we spoke about before. Some very proactive transfers that you have been making. We've got another legend of the FPL Addicts community, James Gasden's talking about Mitoma from Brighton. And I don't know how much of the Newcastle game you caught, the boring 0-0 draw, but he was fantastic when he came off the bench. I think he's going to be a brilliant asset to look at some point. Do you know much about him, Ollie?
That's the first I've actually heard of him. He's gone through to the keeper for mine. I've never heard of him. Is he new signing? Obviously new signing, right?
Yes, I think they signed him last season and they sent him out on loan last season to his parent club. I think it was out in Belgium, and he had Kieran Trippier on ice skates a couple of times when he was playing him. So if you can do that with him, I think he's definitely going to be one that everyone needs to keep their eyes on and keep their eyes peeled for, because he looked absolutely brilliant. Didn't have too much end product, but he didn't really get too much chance to show it. And we know with Brighton, they're the XG merchants. They always have about 10 XG every game, and they've never managed to put the ball in the back of the net. So if he can be that man for them, then I'm sure he'll be a brilliant FPL asset. But Damo's also saying, Ollie, that there's not enough Eze talk. Eze and Crystal Palace have had a good start to the season. So, you know, the likes of Zaha, Eze, do you think people should be getting them in their team?
I've said many times that I quite like Eberechi Eze as a footballer. Again, another championship baller, and I like championship ballers. He's some player, but obviously the injury last season didn't help him. Obviously got the assist for Zaha's goal. And I think if he puts a string of games together, there may be a point in time later on this season, maybe in a couple of game weeks, where we can't turn him down. Obviously, it's quite early in the piece, so he's got a little bit more to say, I reckon, on his season, Eberechi Eze, but low ownership, 1.5% under that. He's at the moment 1.4% he's on, and obviously got a fair few minutes in the game so far. Palace's run is a bit Jekyll and Hyde, though. They've got City in game week 4 and Chelsea game week 9. Leicester game week 11. And they've got, I was going to say United then, but they're nothing to shout about, are they? But Eze is a potential option, but I don't think I'll be looking at him. But you're probably right to bring him up.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, thank you for giving us a little bit of insight in towards your team and your game week last week, Ollie. You had a brilliant score. I'm sure there'll be more of the same this week. I've got to talk about it. And as much as I don't like to talk about how well Jack's doing, you know, especially considering he's not here, we could just move on. But he did have an absolutely brilliant week. He was up there, nearly there for manager of the week. But thank God that he didn't win that. Am I right, boys? We would have been.
Yeah, anyway, so...
So 78 points, not really too much to chat about all round. His transfers this week, I think he's taken St. Maximin out and he's gone to Odegaard and he's got rid of Matty Cash and he's gone to Rico Henry. So that's pretty much all that we need to talk about. And yeah, Jack, it would be great to see you on the podcast.
Differential, doesn't he?
He does. He's moved from Saint to, you know, Rico Henry. So he's spicing it up a little bit this season and trying to keep it as interesting as he possibly can for himself. But unfortunately, both of those players, Cash and St. Maximin, didn't work out for him. So he'll be hoping that Odegaard and Rico Henry can, you know, bring him a couple more points this season. But on to more important things, how I went this week was 60 points, just about above the average. And like Ollie was saying, good in spells with certain parts of my team. And then there were some things that I just wasn't happy about. You know, the points really come from 4 main players: Trippier, Cancelo, Walker, and then Jesus doing the heavy lifting for me this week. And then everywhere else on the pitch, it was pretty much just blank City. You know, not too many people doing anything. Salah with another blank was unfortunate. Neto, Wilson, and the 2 Liverpool defenders again. Trent somehow managed to pick up a bonus point. Not entirely sure. He just gets so many crosses into the box, creates so many chances that the bonus point system always favours him. We said that so much last season. So he somehow managed to get himself a bonus point there. But there isn't too much to shout about from my team, just about scrape the average. But on to bigger and better things this week for me. Transfers wise, I have already made my 2 transfers. I haven't had to take any hits because I had 2 transfers banked. And I've gone from Kieran Trippier to Mark Cucurella at Chelsea. He was brilliant against Spurs, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that he can fill the no Reece James void for me. And then it is also Callum Wilson to Ivan Toney. So 2 Newcastle players out. Hurts me to say. I think we're going to struggle against City and we'll struggle against Liverpool. So I don't really want them in my team, but after that, I'm sure they will be popping back in and being a part of my team. But Cucurella and Toney are my 2 moves this week. Similar to you, Reedy, you brought Toney in this week. So do you really back Toney into to do the business this season so far?
Yeah, I think it's a great move. Of course, we've made the same move with the up top, and we've both brought a Chelsea fullback in. Cucurella, I love that one as a some would say a differential. Fantastic. So yeah, even Toney, I think he's still on penalties as well. Don't think he's got one this season yet, but I'm sure there will be a few there. And I am really, really looking forward to that Fulham Brentford game. I mean, I don't think I'd ever thought myself saying that at any point this season.
London derby.
Yeah, well, yeah. So I just think Brentford will probably take that game right to Fulham. Fulham at home, that's probably the 1+ for them. They look fantastic against us first game of the season. But yeah, I'm ready for the Toney brace at least for us, maybe. That's the hoping anyway. Touch wood.
Yeah, and we've got another question from Josh, and I'll give it to you, Reedy. He's asking who's going to have a better week, Son against Wolves or Sterling against Leeds?
Very, very, very interesting question. Spurs fixtures at home. They play Wolves. I will briefly mention that the head-to-head isn't great against Wolves. This isn't a way to sort of deter anyone away from Spurs assets. I mean, I've got Kulusevski myself. People have, the likes of Mikey there's got Kane, and I think you've got Son as well, haven't you? So it really is a coin toss. I think Sterling could do well against Leeds because, Leeds' defence isn't the best we've seen this season. And Chelsea really, really could. They look fantastic against Spurs for one. They really could put a few past Leeds. I am going to, though, not sit on the fence. And I'm just going to go I'm going to go for Son in this one. I think this might be the one where he does actually show us what he's about and what he did last season. So it's only a matter of time. So I do expect Son to grab a goal at least.
Love it, and he needs it. He dropped overnight. He's still in my team. I'm being stubborn with him, hoping in the next 2 fixtures, he's got 2 nice fixtures, that he can finally do something for Spurs and for so many people's FPL teams. But Mikey, just before we get on to Charlie, his little pre-recorded bits that he's done for us, we've got another question from Tiff. And she says, how soon do you think the template will break and who will break it? Will it be Ivan Toney?
Well, I was hoping it was going to be Darwin Núñez, but unfortunately, not. I think, if there is going to be players that break the template, it's going to be these cheap players with amazing fixtures. So some of the players that we touched on already are Rodrigo and Toney. Another player who's really cheap with amazing fixtures is Brighton's Pascal Gross. I don't think we've mentioned him yet so far. So all these 3 players are definitely players to be wary of because, obviously Pascal Gross is being brought in by some of the top content creators out there this week as well. In terms of his XG as well, by the way, his expected data is really good. And so for 5.6 mil, you could do a lot worse. I know some people are stuck with players like Bailey or Neto in their team, and obviously we've had Ollie who's already written a fantastic article about that, so head over to Ollie's Twitter and check that out. But yeah, I think these guys could be some real template breakers, especially if they carry their expected data into their amazing run of fixtures that they're going to have.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree with what you're saying there, Mikey. I think people like Tony, people like De Silva, these cheap players that have the green flourish of fixtures are going to be the ones that are going to finally put an end to the dreaded template that everyone has got so far this season. And it's going to be those players like Bowen that you brought in, and you mentioned Nunes. So when the red cards die down and the own goals die down, I'm sure things will definitely change for you. As I mentioned, Charlie unfortunately can't be with us today, but he has managed to pre-record the review of his game week 2. So I'm just going to play that for us now, boys, and we'll be back in a little bit.
Hello, boys. Yes, thank you for having me on once again. Unfortunately, I'm really sorry I can't be with you all this evening for the Game Week 3 edition. But unfortunately, life commitments have come in my way on this occasion. So here I am with my team debrief. Firstly, from Game Week 2, we have a look at it. Ended up on 62 points, which was a better performance compared to the opening game week of 46. Just going through the side very quickly. Leicester keepers, we can't really comment on much, but I am very considerate in terms of, is it time to transfer them out within the short-term future, or do we wait for a good while? Because it seems whoever I started with compared to the keepers that are outperforming who I have at the moment are just blazing away with more points. Cash with a blank, and it does hurt me to say that he did drop in price. So if you back to card surcharges, you're the real winners. And if you're stuck with him, well, you're a real loser like me. Cancelo was excellent once again. I think within the opening 2 game weeks, he's been one of the star performers and definitely the best defender. Alexander-Arnold, Robertson, both against Crystal Palace. This is what my game week sort of lent on from a defensive aspect, going from a double up. And with the last 2 game weeks has shown that it has come really risky and it hasn't benefited my way, to say the least. However, he did get a bonus point somehow. And you do get those performances sometimes from Alexander-Arnold. He gets those little 1 or 2 bonus points, even though when he doesn't get a clean sheet. I think his passes are really excellent throughout. And his chance creation is certainly through the roof. We go to Leon Bailey. Yes, from the bench, that may potentially be the final straw. And that's certainly what has transpired from a fantasy price market this week, having dropped in price too. Still unsure, more inclined what to do with him, but just don't know where to. Son with a blank, Saka with a blank, despite Arsenal scoring 4 goals. And yet again, just on the wrong end of it. And if you're an owner of Martinelli, you've certainly won it between those 2 at the moment. But one of my highlights from the game week does go to this Brazilian and the new signing for Liverpool back in January, Luis Diaz, with a fantastic strike in the second half to bring Liverpool back into that game. And for a couple of relevant head-to-head leagues, that goal got me over the line against some opponents. Erling Haaland, yes, look, just an assist for Man City's 4-0 win. Very underwhelming, to say the least. Heavily backed by many managers worldwide and really could have delivered more. Nonetheless, it's not a blank, but Gabriel Jesus, I know Diaz was huge performer for me, but he definitely gets my best on ground with 2 goals, 2 assists against Leicester City. And it really shows how poor Leicester are still defensively. On the bench, 10 left, 10 wasted, 10 left on the pine. Williams against West Ham, I thought was sensational. And really considering a field spot heading into game week 3 with Forest banking their clean sheet. And Andreas Pereira created some okay chances, but ended as a 0-0 at the Molineux. We go to game week 3 now. Now, personally, I haven't put a lot of thought into my transfers at the moment. Nothing is being done, only because of how hectic my week is. But I'll give you some insight in terms of where I want to go for this one. I think Cash and Bailey are most certainly on the chopping list. Don't know which one survives. I'm trying my very best to only use one of the possible 2 free transfers. Cancelo, Trent. Robertson's another one. He's away at Man United. I'm going to give him one more go, but I'm very wary. If it's yet another blank, I think he could go, because you're seeing more valuable defenders, such as the Brentford defenders, but also Reece James, who's performing simply outstanding for Chelsea. Son stays for now. Probably not the armband on him. I think Wolves is too much of a difficult opponent currently, especially when it comes to Spurs. So do tend to play okay against the North London side. Bukayo Saka against Bournemouth. Now, you'd hope he gets a really good return in this game. Otherwise, it's going to be trouble spells there. Luis Diaz away at Man United. You could depict it's an easy fixture. Who knows? Haaland, as it stands, has the armband due to following the 10 million premium price policy away at Newcastle. And Jesus against Bournemouth, who is probably second or third in line in terms of my captaincy. Now, I usually don't break my 10 million premium policy when it comes to the armband, but he may be an exception this time around. On the bench, as it stands, not much has changed. But Neco Williams right now is strongly considering getting a spot on the field, because I've really liked how Forest approached their game after their 2-0 defeat against Newcastle in the opening game week. And if he was going on the field, he would replace Cash. Taylor stays there for now. Aside from that, that's all for my team at the moment. See how it goes, and should post my team either through a WhatsApp or through Twitter when we get closer to the deadline. But that is all.
Thank you, Charlie. Don't really know who the Brazilian Luis Diaz is that's joined the league, but might be a new player for Liverpool. The Brazilian Luis Diaz was fairly sure he was Colombian, Ollie, isn't he?
Yeah, well, I mean, I thought so. Maybe he's gone with a nation change. Maybe he's put a submission into changing nationality to Brazilian. But no, the one I'm aware of is certainly Colombian. So I don't know what.
Maybe that mullet is getting in the way of his brain cells, and it's confusing nationalities in there. But we wouldn't take it away from him, though. At the same time, it is one of the main features of the podcast.
We absolutely wouldn't. And that's not all that you're getting from Chaz today. We've still got his Captain's Corner section. Before we get into that, if you are listening or watching along live or listening to the podcast once it has been finished, make sure you're giving our video some love with a like, rating, review, or a subscription as well. Otherwise, Charlie is going to be sad and he'll have to shave his mullet off. If we don't get enough support, that's what Charlie's going to do. And you don't want him doing that because he prides himself on his mullet. And he prides himself on his captain picks as well. So we've got the Captain's Corner with Chaz coming up now.
Welcome to Captain's Corner. This time for your Game Week 3 edition. I am Charlie Roberts. We go straight to the premium options. And in this game week compared to the other ones, there are more options, but we'll start from where we usually belong. We'll start with the City duo, who are both away at Newcastle. And it's a combination of Erling Haaland and Kevin De Bruyne, who are both going to be mentioned. Both of those two players are the only City players having registered attacking returns in their opening pair of fixtures so far this season. And Kevin De Bruyne, he has the most points of any player priced at over 10 million after the 2 game weeks. And Erling Haaland is looking to perform and, in more ways than one, bounce back after his underwhelming sole assist against the Cherries last time out. Kevin De Bruyne does also hold a respectable record against Newcastle over years, dating back to the 2015/16 season, with his 2 goals and 6 assists in his 8 league games he has faced him. Second in the queue, he's usually featured wherever you may be. The walking Egyptian in Mohamed Salah from Liverpool. Now that we've put the Game Week 2 curse past us, we can focus on a favourable fixture for him in Game Week 3. And his stats from last season truly back that up. In his 2 appearances against Man United, Salah's managed to score 5 goals and 2 assists. This included a hat-trick at Old Trafford last season in their 5-0 win last season in October. Despite him only returning in 1 45-minute half of a possible 4 he's featured in, he is still able to fire plenty of shots and muster heaps of chances. He's still ranked inside the top 10 for both expected goals and assists, with an XG of 0.93 and an expected assist of 0.99. Those stats are in thank you to fantasyfootballpundit.com. Harry Kane, next in the queue. Now, in the past, we could sort of tell that Spurs isn't usually the most favourable fixture for them, being against Wolves. But for Kane, he's fared okay against him in the recent years. And he was the most transferred out player prior to Game Week 2, and he managed to score more than the most transferred in player in Erling Haaland. And this was thanks to his 96th minute winner. Sorry, that's what he said in his press conferences. I mean the equaliser. It was an equalising goal, which was virtually in the last kick of the game, and now 2-2 draw away at Chelsea. And 3 of Tottenham's next 4 fixtures are rated 2 in the fixture difficulty ranking. This is not a bad time to captain him. However, when I mention more captains after this, you may think again. Gabriel Jesus. Don't mind the long pause there. 4th on line. He's not quite a premium price, but he is owned by 3 of every 4 fantasy managers in the game. If you go against him, it is seriously at your peril, and he's right now got a 77% ownership. His campaign got off to a flyer last game week with 2 goals and 2 assists against Brendan Rodgers' Leicester City, which ended up him with 19 points. And along with his much rewarded 3 bonus points, he was somewhat unlucky not to get any in the opening game week. Gabriel Jesus has the equal most bonus points within the BPS system, alongside with Rodrigo from Leeds United. Each was 72. And Bournemouth away presents an excellent opportunity for an already impressive start for Arsenal, with the Cherries having conceded 4 away at the Etihad. 5th in line, a point of difference, a defender. And you'll know why when I mention how he fared against his opponents from last season. João Cancelo for Manchester City. And with his tremendous start to the season, there is certainly reason as for why I am mentioning him. In both of his league appearances against Newcastle last season, he managed returns from both ends of the pitch. This included an 18-pointer away from home back in December in what was a heavily reduced game week 18, only featuring 4 games. And to start the season, he's already kept a clean sheet in both, alongside an assist in game week 2 against Bournemouth. And with these sublime returns thus far, it has made him the 2nd highest scoring defender in the game. Only Newcastle's Fabian Schär has more than him. There's your captain's corner for this edition. All the best for your armband.
What an absolute legend that Charlie Roberts is. He's given his captain picks to us for the week. Was liking it towards the start, and then he started talking about how much Man City are going to dominate Newcastle, and I was, considering turning it off, boys, but the community probably needs to hear that just a little bit, but not too much, Charlie. Not the biggest fan of your captain picks this week. Very Man City centric, and also, the obvious choices, the Salahs, the Jesuses. So it really is, a shot in the dark at who is going to be the best captain pick this week. I don't think we've really had this dilemma so far this season, but so many players to pick from. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one goes. That today does bring us towards the end of the podcast, though. We don't have anything else to add. If you boys don't have anything else to say, any final closing words, any words of wisdom before game week 3, you are more than welcome to do it now.
Quick buzzer beater from Quentin. I reckon we address that first.
Absolutely. It's yours, Ollie.
KDB, Tony, Haaland, Kulusevski. That is a toughie.
It's an interesting spelling of Kulusevski as well.
A little bit. I would go Haaland and Kulusevski just by that much. It's close. Obviously, all 4 are quality players. I just think not having Haaland could be a problem, hence why I've moved on him. And I think Kulusevski, if you haven't got someone like a Luis Diaz, or if you haven't got a Son or a Kane, on the first point, you're covering up your 8 million midfielder, and you've got a way into the Spurs attack. I'd go with the first 2. That's not a bad one to throw to the panel, though, if we've got time. I think that's an interesting one.
Yeah, I think I pretty much agree with what you're saying there, Ollie. I think that Haaland and Kulusevski would just about edge it for me as well. I am bringing in Tony this week, so I do rate him. And De Bruyne obviously has the ability in any game to, really just turn it on. But I think Spurs have got 2 good fixtures the next 2 weeks, and then it sort of goes a little bit downhill. So I don't think it's necessarily an easy decision and I can definitely see actually, I'm talking myself into De Bruyne and Tony now, because Brentford's fixtures are brilliant and City's are as well, and I'm not a huge fan of Spurs. You know what? Just to be different and just to argue with you, Ollie, I'm going to go with De Bruyne and Tony, because I've got to back the man that I'm bringing in this week. So for me, I would say De Bruyne and Tony.
That's fair. That's fair.
Mikey?
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm with you on this one, KDB and Tony, not because of any particular preference, but or any particular fixture reason. But it's just, I think that KDB and Tony, out of those four, are the two most nailed out of all of them. I think Haaland and Kulusevski might see a little bit more rotation, whereas I think KDB and Tony are a bit more, what's the word, talismanic for their teams. So I think if anyone was going to be a minutes risk, it would be the latter two of them.
I think that's a fair call to make there. And Reedy, are you going to agree with me and Mikey? Of course, you're not going to agree with what Mikey says. No way, no chance on earth.
No, it's a 2-1 for me in terms of that. I've got all three of Tony, Haaland, and Kulusevski. I've not got KDB, which, I mean, in terms of someone who loves football and the eye tests, to watch someone like KDB do what he does is just an absolute breath of fresh air. So, I'd love to have him in my team, but I have to go for Haaland and Kulusevski. I think in terms of what they can do within the minutes that they have, the damage they can cause the teams, I think I have to go for them too. Personally, I think, Haaland's just, we'll see him scoring goals again. If he doesn't score against Newcastle, I'd be surprised. But Kulusevski as well can quite easily turn up against Wolves. I think he's the one, if Son and Kane can't quite do it, that will get something out of the game. So, I go for the latter.
Absolutely. And before we finish up, Wing L, another potent member of the community, has also asked us Neto to Gross or Mahrez to Kulusevski or Trippier to Zinchenko, guys. So a fair few in there. I'm not too sure if it's it's one of the three, but I definitely support the Mahrez to Kulusevski and the Trippier to Zinchenko. The Neto to Gross, not too sure. Never too sure on Brighton. Attackers and midfielders. I think Gross's minutes are probably going to be, or his position might be changed a little bit as well. He's been playing wing back for them the past couple of games, and he did have a good start against Man United. He was good against Newcastle, but I think that Mitoma that we were just talking about before is definitely going to start taking a couple of his minutes. He came on for him in that game, and he was absolutely brilliant. So I think I support the latter two, but not too sure about the first one.
Just quickly, Mitoma was on for Trossard, wasn't he?
I'm getting confused between Trossard and Gross. Of course I am. They're basically the same player. Yes, he was, because Trossard's the one playing wing back. Gross is the one that plays attacking midfield. Of course he does. Forget anything that I said. I'm sticking with that.
I'm definitely with the first transfer there. Although if you are scared about Pep Roulette, then Mahrez to Kulu. I think I agree with Rubber Ducky as well. What he's saying about the idea that Kulu could be rotated is a myth. But I do think that maybe going towards the Champions League fixtures that will be coming up in a few game weeks' time, I think we could, Spurs do have a bit more squad depth than they used to, especially last season, going into the Champions League fixtures. So, I'd say one of the first two. It's a toss-up between them. I think people selling Trippier might just be making a mistake. I think he looks amazing. I just bench him. You just bench him for Man City, man, and then bring him in the game after. We've got players like Patterson, Nico Williams, Andreas, De Silva that we can have living on our bench and just bring them in for one game. I think not to try and scare you too much, Al, but I think if I had Trippier, I would be keeping him personally. If I was blessed enough to have Trippier, he'd be on my bench this week, and I'd be playing someone like a Patterson or a Nico Williams.
you've just completely made me realise that I could have held Trippier as well, because I'm not too sure what the situation with Pereira and his injury is. He has got that little flag on there, but I'm pretty sure he's a 75% chance, and he's probably going to end up playing. But I do still back my swap to Cucurella. I think that he will do better than Trippier in the coming weeks, but it is a very interesting thought that you've brought up there, and I think Trippier's got 10 to 20% ownership at the minute. So I think there's going to be a lot of people that would definitely take that advice on board. Before we wrap up, boys, we'll do one more thing. We will just talk about the upcoming fixtures for the game week. There's a lot of exciting ones. I'll just bring my share screen up in just a second, because the fixtures this week, there are a couple of really, really good ones in terms of like an FPL talking point, and then there's a football sense as well. Yeah. So, Reedy, we will swing to you first, mate, and we will go through the fixtures. So, which one pops out to you?
For me, the standout fixture has to be Arsenal v Bournemouth. I think that Arsenal have looked absolutely fantastic at the beginning of the season. Leicester, they just absolutely pummeled them, even though they did leak a couple of goals against them. But everyone's on the Gabriel Jesus train at the moment, 78% and rising. So he's a serious contender for captain this week. And Gabriel Martinelli has looked brilliant as well with his 2 8-pointers. So that one for me is the one where I think that Arsenal really, really are gonna throw everything at Bournemouth, and I do expect a lot of goals in that game. So that one for me is the kind of pick that I'd go for. Love it.
Yeah, what about you, Ollie? Your pick of the town for the fixtures this week?
I'm going to go Spurs Wolves as an early kickoff. Partly because it is an early kickoff, and they're easy to watch, so it'll be good to get a watch of these players. But also, there's a lot of players from both sides I think we've gone with early. Son, Kulusevski. From a Spurs point of view, you've got your Netos from Wolves. I think there'll just be two sides that will go at each other, and I'll leave the one of the later games on the Sunday, Elliot, for you, I reckon.
Oof. Well, it's going to go to Mikey. I was going to go to Mikey first, and I'm pretty sure I was going to say that no one has taken one of the games first that I was thinking of. But Mikey, what is your pick of the week for the fixture?
My pick of the week for this fixture is it's quite a boring one, actually. It's Everton versus Nottingham Forest. I think just from an FPL sense, it is the battle of the 4.0 defenders. That we're going to see who is going to be the best one. I think Tiff as well, shout out Tiff in the chat, is asking Patterson or Nico Williams. I think with Everton's addition of Onana, we're hopefully going to see, well, just in terms of me being an Everton fan.
What's his name, Mikey?
Onana. What's his name?
Yeah. I had to, I'm sorry.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Shearer.
Yeah, the 4.0 defender derby, as IBK says, which is brilliant. Yeah, well done. And I personally, I'm really hoping that the addition of Everton's new number 8 midfielder is going to see some defensive solidity for us. Everton haven't played with a recognised defensive midfielder since we sold Idrissa Gueye over 2 years ago now. We've not had an actual defensive midfielder, so hopefully we'll be a bit more solid. Maybe we'll be getting some clean sheet points, and maybe Patterson will be flying up and down the wing like he has been the last couple of games. Maybe even grab us a cheeky return.
We'll just have to see. You're talking a lot up about the Toffees there, and I'm sure it'll all just come crumbling down with Everton, as it always seems to do season after season for them. But we'll just have to see for that one. We sat in the box office with our popcorn out. In terms of the remaining fixtures, I think the big ones, Man United Liverpool is obviously the big fixture. I think I can't believe no one's mentioned that in too much detail there, but I think that is the big fixture for me. And then Newcastle City as well. It's another one that I think is a fairly big game, and a lot of FPL assets are going to be expected to do well in both of those ones on the Man City and the Liverpool side.
Is anyone tempted to do something a little bit dramatic in the Man United Liverpool game in terms of FPL?
What, with a certain Mr. Mo Salah, you think?
Yeah, potentially. Is anyone tempted?
What, like a triple captain?
Something like that. I wasn't going to mention the TC word.
I was tempted with a TC, but I don't think I'm going to do it.
Oh,
I think
come on, you've got to.
I want to save it for later in the season, but you know what? I'm going to think about it. I am really tempted to go with the triple captain of Salah against United because he was so good last season against Werning, and it's one of those that if he gets another hat trick, no one's used a triple captain this early. You just rocket up the leagues, don't you?
Yeah.
So
just a word of warning though, Ollie, playing your chips too early. You know, me and Mikey know too well now, don't we?
Yeah, but
it can't always go to plan.
You just played your wild card. That was,
I mean, as well as that,
to build a team, and you throw it all away after 1 week.
So, as well as that, though, where Ollie, people played the triple captain for Haaland last week against Bournemouth, and look what happened with that one. So,
I think one of the things that we need to recognise in FPL is that there's always exceptions to the rules. You know, sometimes we always say, "Oh well, you have to definitely captain a double game week player," and then we saw last season with players like from Watford and stuff getting the armband and stuff like that. I think if
Dennis,
he's exactly.
Back. He's back.
If I was going to argue in favour of the triple captain, I think Liverpool are one of the best in the league right now for expected goals, and I also think sorry Jack if he's watching, but Man United look absolutely shocking. They look an absolute shambles, and it looks like it's a possibility for a perfect storm of one of the best attacking teams versus a team in absolute free fall.
Yeah, the one thing I would say that puts me, the one reason, this is going to sound really weird, but go with me. The one bad thing about Captain Salah is because of the 4-0 defeat to Brentford, I think United are going to respond. I don't think they can play as bad as that the following week. I think it's a bit of reverse psychology. And the reason why I'm saying it is that, in the Championship for us, Reading got beat 4-0 off Rotherham and turned us over 3-0. It's one of those football is a game you cannot predict. You cannot predict it. And it's going to be an interesting one. I don't think I'll play it. There's an interesting comment about not playing your chips too early. Slightly more, what would you call it, colloquially or euphemistically. But I don't think I'll play it, but I've put it on record to say that I'm contemplating it.
So if you don't play it, you're a loser, and we're going to ridicule you next week on the podcast if Salah scores a hat-trick.
I mean, if he scores a hat-trick, he scores a hat-trick, and I'll take his 20 points and run, but you can do that if you want, mate. I can't stop you.
But he's definitely going to have the armband for you, yeah?
Yes, he will. I'm going to lock that in now, he will.
Well, by the Reverend's mentality, you can only triple captain one player, so you might as well triple captain Salah this week.
God, stop trying to play me into it, El.
I could be doing you a massive favour. I could honestly be doing you the biggest favour.
He's absolutely gone fishing here, and he's caught a big one. He's caught a big one.
Oh God! What are we going to do? Maybe we should do a poll on Instagram, say whether I should play it or not. Everyone wants me to play it because everyone wants the big moments.
I think the decisive vote should be coming from this man who's just made a little cameo. It's Charlie Roberts joining us live from the train station in Melbourne. How are you doing, Charlie?
Yeah, we're good, thank you, Elliot. Hello, and good morning and good evening to wherever you are around the planet. Pleasure to be here.
So, Charlie, Ollie's talking about potentially playing his triple captain this week. You are the captain maestro. We've had your captain picks this week. Do you reckon he should triple captain Salah this week?
Whatever you're smoking this week, Ollie, I'm not having any of it.
Come on.
That's the best way to put it.
That's not a bad call. That's not a bad call.
I'd say wait it for double game week.
This week and this week only. I preferred when you weren't on this podcast. I didn't think I'd be saying that. Oh, mate.
Got a triple captain Salah this week. It was good, mate. It was good. We're just about to wrap up, so as long as there's no more live comments from anyone, we'll end it there. And we thank you all for your continued love and support. Had a lot of questions coming through today, so we really do appreciate that. And we obviously love giving out the best advice that we possibly can. That's why I generally try and get Reedy and Mikey to answer the questions and steer clear of Ollie as much as I possibly can. But we will join you this time next week again, fingers crossed, with a buttload more of FPL points banked for you this season. But until then, take care, stay safe. May all your FPL dreams come true for Game Week 3. Bye for now.